"Cut her loose, you fool. Those wolves are closing in." The mountain man's blade slices through the ropes binding the trembling girl to wooden stakes, her dark skin gleaming with sweat under the merciless desert sun. The townsfolk had laughed as they left her for the pack, calling her uppity, worthless, deserving of a savage death. They expect nothing but screams and bones by morning. But the grizzled cowboy sees something they missed: intelligence burning behind her terrified eyes, education hidden beneath her fear. His own wanted posters crinkle in his saddlebags as he makes a choice that will bind their fates together. Her secret knowledge could save lives, while his buried evidence could topple corrupt empires. Both carry truths that powerful men would kill to silence. Will they escape the circling predators long enough to expose the real beasts, or will the wilderness claim them before justice can prevail? The dust settled around Loretta Me's worn boots as she stepped into Bleakridge's main street. 3 days of travel had left her dress wrinkled and her back aching, but hope still flickered in her chest. This dying mining town might finally offer her a chance. She clutched her small satchel tighter. Inside lay her sewing supplies and carefully folded testimonials from Eastern ladies who had praised her needlework. What they didn't know was that those same hands had once sutured wounds and delivered babies during her secret medical training. The general store's bell chimed as she entered. Behind the counter stood Tobias Grimm, a thick man with calculating eyes and gold teeth that caught the lamplight. His gaze traveled over her slowly. "I'm seeking work as a seamstress," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I have references." Grimm's smile stretched wide. "References, you say? Well now, that's mighty impressive for someone like you." Heat rose in her cheeks, but she maintained her composure. "I do quality work, sir. My stitching is precise and my rates are fair." "Oh, I'm sure your talents are many." He leaned across the counter, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Perhaps we could discuss your skills privately. Tonight, after closing." The suggestion hung in the air like smoke. Loretta Me straightened her shoulders. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'm here to offer professional services only." Grimm's expression darkened. "Professional? You forget your place, girl. I know exactly where I stand." She turned toward the door. "Good day to you." From the shadowed corner of the saloon across the street, Rhett Coulter watched the exchange through the grimy window. The woman carried herself differently than most who passed through Bleakridge. There was education in her posture, dignity in her bearing. It reminded him of things he'd tried to forget. He touched the folded papers hidden in his vest pocket. Evidence that could destroy a powerful man. Evidence that made him a target. 3 hours later, shouts erupted from the general store. Grimm's voice boomed across the street as he emerged, holding a silver pocket watch. "Thief! That woman robbed me." Sheriff Hayes appeared with suspicious speed, as if he'd been waiting nearby. His badge caught the afternoon sun as he strode toward the boarding house where Loretta Me had taken a room. "Search her belongings," Grimm demanded. "She took my watch when I refused her advances." Rhett's jaw tightened. He'd seen this dance before: the setup, the false accusation, the rush to judgment. Within minutes, Hayes emerged from the boarding house, holding the very watch Grimm had claimed was stolen. Found it in her satchel, plain as day. A crowd gathered like vultures sensing carrion. Loretta Me stood in their center, her back straight despite the accusations flying around her. "I've never seen that watch before in my life." "Course you'd say that," someone called out. "They all lie when caught." "She got uppity with me earlier," Grimm announced to the crowd. "Thought she was too good for honest work. When I turned her down, she must have taken my watch out of spite." Rhett knew better. He'd watched Grimm plant the watch during the woman's brief absence from her room, but speaking up would mean exposure. It would mean risking everything he'd worked to hide. Hayes raised his hand for silence. "Theft is a serious crime in Bleakridge, but seeing as we ain't got a proper jail and the circuit judge won't be through for months, we'll handle this the frontier way." The crowd murmured approval. Frontier justice was swift and harsh. "You'll be taken outside town at dawn," Hayes continued. "Left for the wolves. Let nature decide your guilt or innocence." Loretta Mee's composure finally cracked. "This is murder, not justice." "Should have thought of that before you stole from honest folk," Grimm said with satisfaction. That night, as the townspeople celebrated their rough justice with whiskey and cruel laughter, Rhett sat alone in his room above the saloon. Through his window, he could see the wooden stakes being driven into the hard ground beyond the town limits. He'd failed to act before. In another town, under another name, he'd watched corruption triumph while good people suffered. The weight of his cowardice had driven him into the wilderness, running from both his past and his conscience. From her window in the saloon below, Sadie LaRoche watched the same scene. Her weathered hands gripped her coffee cup as she wrestled with thoughts she'd kept buried for years. She'd seen plenty of rough justice in her time, but something about this felt different. Wrong. Dawn approached with merciless certainty. The wolves had been howling closer to town each night, driven by hunger and the harsh winter. Everyone knew what awaited beyond those stakes. As the first pale light touched the horizon, Hayes and his men dragged Loretta Mee from her makeshift cell. Her wrists were bound, but her chin remained raised. Even facing death, she refused to break. The stakes stood ready. The ropes lay coiled like sleeping snakes. In the distance, yellow eyes reflected the early morning light. Rhett checked his rifle and mounted his horse. His wanted posters rustled in his saddlebag, reminding him of the risks. But some things mattered more than safety. The crowd dispersed quickly once Loretta Mee was secured, eager to distance themselves from what was to come. Only the wolves would witness what happened next. As the sun climbed higher, Rhett rode toward the stakes where an innocent woman waited for death. Behind him, his past pursued like shadows. Ahead lay a choice that would define them both. The morning sun cast long shadows across the desert floor as Rhett approached the wooden stakes. Loretta Mee hung suspended between them, her wrists raw from the coarse rope. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool dawn air. 3 wolves circled at a distance, their yellow eyes fixed on easy prey. They had learned patience from countless hunts, but hunger made them bold. Rhett's horse snorted nervously at the scent of predators. He dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on the gravelly earth. His knife gleamed as he pulled it from his belt. "Stay still," he said quietly. Loretta Mee's eyes widened as the stranger approached. She had prepared herself for death, but not for rescue. "They'll come after you too. Let them come." The blade sliced through the first rope. Her left arm dropped, circulation returning with painful tingles. The largest wolf, a gray male with scarred flanks, took a step closer. Its lips pulled back to reveal yellowed fangs. The pack had been denied their expected meal. Rhett cut the second rope. Loretta Mee stumbled forward, her legs weak from hours of suspension. He caught her elbow, steadying her against his shoulder. "Can you ride?" She nodded, though her vision swam. "I think so." The wolves spread out, forming a loose triangle around them. Pack tactics honed by generations of successful hunts. They moved with practiced coordination, cutting off escape routes. Rhett's horse danced sideways, ears pinned back. The animal's instincts screamed danger. In the distance, dust clouds marked the approach of Sheriff Hayes and his men. "Up you go." Rhett boosted Loretta Mee onto his horse, then swung up behind her. His rifle remained in its scabbard for now. Bullets were precious, and noise would only draw the posse faster. The gray wolf lunged as they spurred forward. Rhett's horse reared, striking out with iron hooves. The wolf twisted away, but not quickly enough. A hoof caught its shoulder, spinning it into the dirt. 2 more wolves charged from the flanks. Rhett drew his pistol and fired once into the ground between them. The sharp crack and spray of dirt sent them skittering backward, but they didn't flee far. The horse galloped toward the rocky canyon beyond town. Behind them, the injured wolf limped after its packmates, determined not to lose this meal. Blood dripped from its shoulder, leaving a crimson trail in the dust. "There," Hayes's voice echoed across the desert. The posse had reached the abandoned stakes. Gunshots cracked through the morning air. Bullets whined past Rhett's head as he urged his mount toward the canyon's narrow entrance. The rocky walls would provide cover and force their pursuers to follow single file. The gray wolf made one final desperate leap. Its jaws snapped shut on Rhett's left calf, teeth punching through leather and flesh. He roared in pain but stayed in the saddle. Loretta Me grabbed his pistol from its holster. She twisted in the saddle and pressed the barrel against the wolf's skull. The animal released its grip and dropped away, unwilling to face the cold metal. Blood soaked through Rhett's boot. The wolf's teeth had found their mark, tearing muscle and sinew. Each stride of the horse sent fresh waves of agony through his leg. They reached the canyon just as the posse rounded the town's outskirts. The narrow passage swallowed them, red stone walls rising on both sides like the ribs of some ancient beast. "You're bleeding badly," Loretta Me said, twisting to examine his wound. "I'll live." But even as he said it, darkness crept at the edges of his vision. Blood loss and shock were taking their toll. The canyon wound deeper into the mountains, splitting into smaller passages and hidden valleys. Rhett had explored this maze during his weeks in Bleakridge, learning its secrets while planning his eventual escape. They climbed steadily, the horses' breathing growing labored in the thin air. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter as the posse struggled to follow their trail over solid rock. By midday, they had put miles between themselves and their hunters. Rhett guided his horse to a hidden spring he had discovered earlier, a small oasis tucked between towering stone walls. He slid from the saddle and immediately collapsed. His leg buckled beneath him, no longer able to bear weight. The leather of his boot had turned dark with blood. Loretta Me dismounted and knelt beside him. She examined the wound with practiced efficiency, her fingers probing gently around the puncture marks. "This needs immediate attention," she said. "The bleeding won't stop on its own." Rhett's breathing had become shallow and rapid. Fever was already beginning as his body fought infection. "Just need rest." "No," her voice carried unexpected authority. "You need medical care, proper medical care." She looked around the small canyon, assessing their resources: water from the spring, limited supplies in his saddlebags. No proper medical equipment except what frontier travelers usually carried. But she had something else. Knowledge that could save his life if she dared reveal it. The wolf bite had torn through major blood vessels. Without intervention, he would bleed to death within hours. Even if the bleeding stopped, infection would likely kill him within days. Loretta Me made her decision. She began rolling up her sleeves with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. "What are you doing?" Rhett asked through gritted teeth. "Saving your life." Her hands moved with surgical precision as she prepared to reveal the secret she had guarded so carefully. Loretta Me knelt beside Rhett's motionless form, her trained eyes assessing the severity of his condition. His breathing had grown shallow, and his skin had taken on a grayish pallor. The wolf bite had done more damage than either of them initially realized. She pressed 2 fingers against his wrist, counting his pulse, rapid and thready, classic signs of significant blood loss. His boot was now completely soaked through, creating a small pool in the sandy ground beneath them. "Stay with me," she murmured, though he had already lost consciousness. From his saddlebags, she retrieved a small bottle of whiskey, some clean cloth, and a basic sewing kit. Standard frontier supplies, but woefully inadequate for what needed to be done. She would have to improvise with the precision her medical training had taught her. First, she needed to see the wound clearly. Using his knife, she carefully cut away the damaged leather of his boot and the torn fabric of his pants leg. The wolf's fangs had created 4 distinct puncture wounds, 2 deep and 2 shallow. The deeper wounds had penetrated muscle and possibly nicked the major blood vessels running along his calf. She examined each puncture with systematic thoroughness, her fingers probing gently but confidently. Years of anatomy studies guided her movements as she assessed the damage to underlying structures. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped completely. Working quickly, she cleaned her hands in the spring water, then poured whiskey over them as an additional precaution. Her movements carried the practiced efficiency of someone who had performed these procedures countless times before. "Forgive me for this," she said to his unconscious form as she poured whiskey directly into the wounds. Even unconscious, Rhett's body jerked at the burning sensation. She pressed clean cloth firmly against the wounds, applying direct pressure to control the bleeding while the alcohol did its work against infection. The deepest puncture worried her most. She could feel the damaged muscle beneath, torn and traumatized by the wolf's powerful jaws. Without proper surgical intervention, it might never heal correctly. He could be permanently lame. She made her decision. Using the tip of his knife, sterilized in the fire she had quickly built, she carefully extended the deepest wound. Her movements were precise and controlled, each cut deliberate and purposeful. This was surgery, not butchery. Rhett's breathing changed as her knife worked. His unconscious mind registered the pain even if he couldn't respond to it. She worked faster, knowing that consciousness might return at any moment. With the wound properly opened, she could see the full extent of the damage. The wolf's fang had indeed nicked the posterior tibial artery. Not a complete severation, thankfully, but enough to cause dangerous bleeding. Using thread from his sewing kit, she tied off the damaged vessel with surgical knots her professors had drilled into her memory. Each suture was placed with mathematical precision, bringing the torn edges together in perfect alignment. Blood flow restored, she murmured to herself, falling into the clinical language of her training. Muscle tissue viable, no sign of major nerve damage. She worked systematically through each layer of tissue, repairing what could be repaired and cleaning what could only heal with time. Her sutures were small and even, the work of someone who understood both the art and science of healing. As she worked, memories flooded back. Late nights in anatomy classes, dissecting cadavers by lamplight while her male classmates questioned her presence. The dean who had grudgingly allowed her to attend lectures but refused to acknowledge her achievements. The patients who had trusted her skill despite society's prejudices. She had earned her medical degree through twice the effort required of her male classmates. Every examination had been scrutinized more harshly, every diagnosis questioned more thoroughly. Yet she had persevered, driven by an unshakable belief that healing knew no boundaries of race or gender. The final sutures went in as the afternoon sun slanted through the canyon walls. She bandaged the wound with strips torn from her own petticoat, wrapping it firmly but not tightly enough to restrict circulation. Rhett's color had already begun to improve. His pulse, while still rapid, had gained strength. The immediate crisis had passed, but infection remained a serious threat. She prepared a poultice from plants growing near the spring, herbs her grandmother had taught her to recognize long before medical school had explained their antimicrobial properties. Traditional knowledge and modern science working together. As evening approached, Rhett's eyes fluttered open. He tried to sit up, but she pressed him back down with gentle but firm pressure. "Don't move yet. The sutures need time to set." He stared at her with confusion, then at his expertly bandaged leg. "What did you do?" "I saved your life." She sat back on her heels, exhaustion finally showing in her face. "You had arterial damage. Without surgical repair, you would have bled out within the hour." "Surgical repair?" His voice was barely a whisper. "You're a seamstress." "No," she met his eyes steadily. "I'm Dr. Loretta Me Washington. I graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania 3 years ago. Top of my class." The revelation hung between them like morning mist, impossible to ignore yet difficult to accept. Everything he thought he knew about her had just been turned upside down. "A doctor," he repeated slowly. "I've been trying to establish a practice somewhere, anywhere that would accept me. But a black woman physician threatens too many people's assumptions about natural order." Rhett looked down at his leg, then back at her face. The evidence of her skill was undeniable. She had performed surgery with frontier tools and saved his life with knowledge that few people possessed. Why hide it? Because sometimes survival requires invisibility. Sometimes competence must be concealed until the moment it becomes absolutely necessary. She helped him sit up slowly. "Welcome to that moment." 3 days after the surgery, Rhett could walk with minimal pain. Dr. Washington's precise work had healed faster than any frontier medicine he had ever witnessed. The revelation of her true identity had shifted everything between them. They traveled carefully through the mountain passes, avoiding main trails where Sheriff Hayes might track them. Rhett's assumptions about his companion crumbled with each demonstration of her intelligence and skill. New Haven is still 2 days' ride, he said, checking his crude map. Town there might be different, more progressive than Bleakridge. Every town claims to be different. She adjusted the makeshift medical bag she had assembled from their combined supplies. Until they see what I actually am. Their first test came sooner than expected. Smoke rose from a homestead tucked in a valley below them. As they approached, desperate voices called out from inside the small cabin. A young woman appeared in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. "Please, if you're decent folk, my boy is dying. Fever took him 3 days ago and won't break." Loretta Me dismounted without hesitation. Inside the cabin, a child of perhaps 8 years lay motionless on a rough bed. His skin burned with fever, his breathing rapid and shallow. She knelt beside him, her trained hands checking his pulse and examining his throat. "When did the fever start?" "Monday morning. Started with a sore throat." The mother wrung her hands. "We tried everything we know, but nothing helps." Loretta Me recognized the symptoms immediately. Scarlet fever, dangerous but treatable with proper care. She had seen dozens of cases during her training. "I can help him," she said quietly. "But I'll need willow bark and cool water." "Lots of cool water." The mother looked uncertainly at this well-dressed woman giving medical orders. "Are you a nurse?" "I'm a doctor." The woman's eyes widened, then narrowed with suspicion. She had never seen a woman doctor, especially not one who looked like this stranger. Rhett stepped forward. "Ma'am, she just saved my life with surgery 3 days ago. Your boy needs her help." Over the next 6 hours, Loretta Me worked methodically. She prepared willow bark tea to reduce fever, applied cool compresses to lower his body temperature, and carefully monitored his vital signs. By evening, the child's fever had broken. Color returned to his cheeks as he asked for water in a clear voice. His mother wept with relief. "How can we ever repay you?" "Just remember that healing comes in many forms," Loretta Me replied. "And that competence doesn't always look like what you expect." As they prepared to leave the next morning, the mother pressed a small cloth bundle into Loretta Me's hands. "Dried herbs from my garden. Might help with your doctoring." Word of the miracle cure spread faster than they traveled. At their next stop, a trading post at a mountain crossroads, 3 more families waited with sick children and injured family members. Loretta Me treated them all. A broken arm that she set with professional skill, an infected wound that she cleaned and sutured properly, an elderly man with painful joints who found relief from her herbal preparations. Each success built her confidence. Each grateful patient proved her worth. The fear and doubt that had haunted her since leaving medical school began to fade. "You're different now," Red observed as they camped that night. "More yourself." "I'm remembering who I trained to be." She checked his bandages with practiced efficiency. "Hiding takes so much energy. Using my skills freely feels like breathing again." But their growing reputation attracted unwanted attention. At the next trading post, wanted posters covered the bulletin board. Rhett's face stared back at them from yellowed paper. "Wanted for theft of federal funds and corruption of office," he read aloud. $500 reward. "Is it true?" "No." His jaw tightened. "But the man who put up those posters won't let truth get in his way." Loretta Me studied the poster more carefully. Something about the description bothered her. The crimes listed didn't match Rhett's character as she had come to know it. "You were a marshal," she said. "It wasn't a question. For 6 years. Thought I was serving justice." He touched the badge-shaped indent on his vest where he had once worn his authority. "Until I discovered my partner was stealing federal money meant for territorial development." "What happened?" "I gathered evidence. Planned to report him to our superiors." Rhett's expression darkened. "He found out first. Planted evidence in my quarters, claimed I was the thief. Had to run before they arrested me." Sheriff Hayes. Ellery Hayes, yes, my former partner and the man who's been hunting us. Rhett crumpled the poster. He needs me dead to keep his secret safe. The pieces fell into place for Loretta Me. Hayes's desperate pursuit wasn't about frontier justice or even racial hatred. It was about protecting a corrupt secret that could destroy his comfortable life. What evidence do you have? Rhett pulled a leather portfolio from his saddlebag. Financial records, correspondence, witness statements, everything needed to prove his guilt. Why haven't you used it? Who would believe a fugitive over a decorated sheriff? He secured the portfolio carefully. Besides, Hayes has the territorial governor's ear. My word against his was never going to be enough. That night, they reached New Haven's outskirts just as the sun set behind the mountains. The town looked prosperous and welcoming, with well-maintained buildings and busy streets. But even in the gathering darkness, Loretta Me could see more wanted posters nailed to fence posts and building walls. Hayes had reached New Haven first. Their reputation as healer and protector had preceded them, but so had the price on their heads. New Haven's Main Street bustled with evening activity as Loretta Me and Rhett rode into town. Merchants closed their shops while families gathered for supper. The town had a prosperity that Bleakridge lacked, with painted storefronts and well-maintained boardwalks. Their arrival drew curious stares, but not the immediate hostility they had expected. A few people recognized Loretta Me from descriptions passed along by travelers, and word spread quickly that the healing woman had finally reached New Haven. Dr. Samuel Morrison, the town's aging physician, emerged from his clinic as they dismounted. His white hair and bent frame spoke of decades serving frontier communities, but his eyes remained sharp and interested. "Are you the woman who's been treating folks along the mountain trail?" he asked. "I am Dr. Loretta Me Washington." She met his gaze directly, no longer hiding her credentials. Morrison's eyebrows rose. "Doctor, where did you train?" "Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, class of 1869. The old physician studied her carefully, then glanced at Rhett's expertly bandaged leg. "I heard you performed field surgery with basic supplies." "Is that true?" Wolf bite. "Arterial damage required immediate intervention." She spoke with clinical precision. "Patient made full recovery with proper post-operative care." Morrison nodded slowly. "I've been practicing medicine for 30 years. Haven't seen many surgeons who could work under those conditions." He gestured toward his clinic. "Would you care to examine my facilities? I could use assistance with some difficult cases." For the first time in years, Loretta Me felt genuine welcome from a medical colleague. "I would be honored." But their moment of hope shattered as dust clouds appeared on the horizon. A large group of riders approached at full gallop, led by a man whose badge gleamed in the fading sunlight. Sheriff Hayes had arrived with a federal marshal and 6 deputies. The lawmen rode straight down Main Street, scattering pedestrians and causing horses to rear in fright. Hayes's face was grim with determination as he spotted his quarry outside the medical clinic. "Rhett Coulter," he called out, his voice carrying across the evening air. "You're under arrest for theft of federal funds and corruption of office." The federal marshal, a stern man named Williams, rode beside Hayes with official documents in his hand. "By order of the territorial government, you will be returned to face trial." Townspeople gathered in doorways and windows, sensing drama about to unfold. Dr. Morrison stepped protectively closer to Loretta Me, his medical instincts recognizing something false in the proceedings. "What about the woman?" Hayes asked Williams, nodding toward Loretta Me. "No federal charges," the marshal replied. "She's your jurisdiction if you want her." Hayes's smile turned predatory. "Oh, I want her. She's wanted for theft and resisting arrest in Bleakridge." "This is a setup," Rhett said loudly enough for the growing crowd to hear. "Hayes is the real thief. He's been hunting me to cover his own crimes." "Typical criminal behavior," Hayes replied smoothly. "Blame the honest lawman when justice catches up." Marshal Williams looked uncomfortable with the exchange, but his orders were clear. Federal warrants took precedence over local disputes. Mayor Henderson pushed through the crowd, a portly man who clearly valued New Haven's reputation for fairness. Hold on now. These folks have been helping our people. The woman treated sick children along the mountain trail. She's a fraud, Hayes declared. Probably poisoned more than she helped. Can't trust someone like that with medical care. Dr. Morrison stepped forward, his age and reputation commanding respect. I examined her work personally. This woman has genuine medical training. Her surgical technique is flawless. Impossible, Hayes scoffed. Look at her, use your common sense. The crowd murmured uncertainly. Years of prejudice warred with evidence of Loretta Me's competence. They had heard the stories of her healing work, but Hayes's dismissal fed their deepest doubts. Rhett pulled the leather portfolio from his saddlebag, holding it high for all to see. The proof of Hayes's corruption is right here. Financial records, witness statements, correspondence showing his theft of territorial development funds. Marshall Williams looked interested despite himself. What kind of proof? Bank records showing deposits that don't match his salary, letters discussing kickbacks from government contracts, testimony from witnesses who saw him take bribes. Rhett's voice carried the authority of his former badge. Everything needed to convict him of federal crimes. Hayes's composure cracked slightly. Forged documents, desperate lies from a cornered criminal. Then you won't mind if Marshall Williams examines them, Loretta Me said quietly. I mind plenty, Hayes snapped. We're wasting time on the fantasies of thieves and frauds. Mayor Henderson sensed the tension escalating beyond his control. Seems to me we need a proper hearing before anyone gets arrested. Let both sides present their evidence. Federal warrant doesn't require a hearing, Marshall Williams said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Then examine Rhett's evidence, Dr. Morrison suggested. If it's forged, you'll know immediately. If it's genuine, you'll have arrested the wrong man. The crowd voiced agreement. New Haven prided itself on fairness, and summary justice sat poorly with their values. Marshall Williams looked between Hayes and Rhett, weighing his options. His career depended on following orders, but arresting innocent people would destroy his reputation. We'll hold a public hearing tomorrow morning, he decided. Both parties can present evidence before any arrests are made. Hayes's face darkened with barely controlled rage. His plan to eliminate Rhett quietly had failed. Now he faced public scrutiny of evidence that could destroy him. Fine, he said through gritted teeth, but they remain in custody until the hearing. Protective custody, Mayor Henderson corrected. In the hotel, not the jail. These folks aren't proven criminals yet. As evening fell over New Haven, the stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but the future of justice in the territory. Truth and lies would finally face each other in the harsh light of public examination. Dawn broke over New Haven with unusual activity. Word of the public hearing had spread through surrounding settlements, drawing curious onlookers and those who had benefited from Loretta Me's medical care along the mountain trail. The town hall filled beyond capacity. Families she had helped traveled from distant homesteads to witness the proceedings. Dr. Morrison sat in the front row, his medical bag containing documentation of her surgical work. Marshall Williams called the hearing to order at precisely 9 o'clock. His federal authority commanded respect, but the unusual circumstances had clearly unsettled him. We're here to examine evidence before making any arrests, he announced. Sheriff Hayes will present his case first. Hayes rose confidently, his badge catching the morning sunlight streaming through tall windows. Rhett Coulter stole $15,000 in federal development funds over 2 years. He disappeared when our investigation closed in. He produced official documents stamped with territorial seals. Bank records, witness statements, even photographs of evidence found in Rhett's former quarters. The proof is overwhelming, Hayes continued. Coulter was my trusted partner. His betrayal of that trust makes his crimes even worse. Several townspeople nodded. The evidence appeared solid, backed by official authority they had been taught to respect. Marshall Williams examined the documents carefully. Everything looked legitimate. Hayes had prepared thoroughly for this moment. "Your response, Mr. Coulter." Rhett stood slowly, his bearing still carrying traces of his former authority. "Everything Sheriff Hayes just showed you is fabricated evidence he planted to cover his own crimes." He opened his leather portfolio with steady hands. "These are the real financial records. Bank deposits into Hayes's personal account that match exactly with missing federal funds." The first document showed a deposit of $3,000 into Hayes's account on the same day that amount disappeared from territorial coffers. The second showed another deposit matching another theft. "Here's correspondence between Hayes and territorial contractors," Rhett continued. "Letters discussing kickback payments for inflated government contracts." Marshall Williams studied the papers with growing interest. The handwriting matched samples of Hayes's official reports. The bank stamps were genuine. "Where did you get these?" Williams asked. "I was investigating irregularities in our district's finances when I discovered the pattern. Hayes was skimming money from federal development projects and splitting profits with crooked contractors." Hayes's face had gone pale. "Forgeries. Obvious forgeries created by a desperate criminal." "Then you won't mind if we verify them with the banks," Dr. Morrison suggested from the audience. The crowd murmured agreement. Several people recognized the bank's stamps and seals as genuine. But the hearing's pivotal moment came when young Timothy Peterson burst through the doors. The 8-year-old boy Loretta Mee had saved from scarlet fever ran straight to her side. "Ma says you're in trouble," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "But you saved my life when I was dying." His mother followed, carrying a crying infant. "Dr. Washington, my baby won't stop fussing. She's been sick all night." Without hesitation, Loretta Mee moved toward the child. Her trained eyes quickly assessed the infant's symptoms. Elevated temperature, labored breathing, distinctive rash beginning to appear. "She needs immediate medical attention," Loretta Mee announced. "Early-stage scarlet fever, same as your son had." The mother's face went white with fear. "Will she die?" "Not if we treat her properly. Dr. Morrison, I'll need willow bark extract and cool water for temperature reduction." She worked with swift efficiency while the entire hearing watched. Her hands moved with professional confidence, checking the baby's pulse, examining her throat, preparing proper medication. Within minutes, the infant's breathing eased. The fever began to break under Loretta Mee's expert care. "How did you know?" Dr. Morrison asked with genuine admiration. "Medical training, 4 years of study, 2 years of clinical practice." She continued monitoring the baby's vital signs. "Scarlet fever presents distinctively if you know what to look for." Marshall Williams watched the medical demonstration with growing understanding. No fraud could perform with such obvious competence. "Dr. Washington," he said formally, "would you explain your qualifications?" "Graduate of Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, licensed physician with surgical training. I've been seeking a place to practice where my credentials would be accepted." Hayes made one final desperate attempt. "This is all theater. Trained monkeys can follow medical procedures." The insult hung in the air like gun smoke. Several townspeople shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the ugliness behind his words. Dr. Morrison stood slowly, his decades of respected service lending weight to his words. "Marshall Williams, I've practiced frontier medicine for 30 years. What I witnessed here today demonstrates surgical skill and diagnostic ability that few physicians possess." "The evidence speaks for itself," Williams declared. "Sheriff Hayes, you're under arrest for theft of federal funds and corruption of office." Hayes's hand moved toward his gun, but 6 federal deputies surrounded him before he could draw. His face contorted with rage and defeat. "The woman's still a criminal," he snarled as handcuffs closed around his wrists. "No," Williams replied firmly. "She's a doctor." 2 months later, Dr. Loretta Mee Washington hung her medical diploma in the front window of New Haven's expanded clinic. Patients of every background sought her expertise, drawn by competence rather than deterred by prejudice. Rhett Coulter pinned on a sheriff's badge, his name cleared and his integrity restored. His first official act was hiring Dr. Washington as the territory's medical examiner. The wooden stakes that had once held her as prey for wolves now served as fence posts around her clinic garden, where she grew medicinal herbs and trained young women in healing arts. Sadie LaRoche arrived from Bleakridge with news that Tobias Grimm's corrupt practices had been exposed after Hayes's arrest. The town was slowly learning that justice required more than prejudice and assumption. On quiet evenings, Rhett and Dr. Washington would sit on her clinic porch, watching the sun set behind mountains that had once threatened their lives. They had faced wolves both animal and human, and emerged with something more valuable than survival. They had found their place in a world slowly learning that competence and character mattered more than appearance or assumption. Their partnership had proven that dignity and truth could triumph over prejudice and corruption. New Haven became known throughout the territory as a place where justice was measured by merit rather than bias, where healing hands were welcomed regardless of their color, and where two unlikely allies had rewritten the rules of frontier society. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel, and if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.